Today I'm going to talk about 5 ways that you can stay young in your 70s. Now, I'm going to be talking about a number of things. Just because you've turned 70 and that clock has ticked over to the big 7, it doesn't mean to say that you have to suddenly fall back into being an old person. Or it doesn't mean to say that you have to now start considering, oh gosh, I'm in my 70s, I'm an old person. Now, the first point I want to make here on the idea of turning 70 and suddenly feeling that you've become an old person is your attitude. Age is just a number, and it depends on your attitude about aging and about ability and about a number of other things that are going on in your life that make you realise, well, you know, is it just my attitude to this, or is there some underlying cause that's making me feel suddenly that I'm getting old now that I'm 70? So attitude is very, very important. Don't let yourself believe that you're getting old and that you don't have a purpose anymore. It is important that you actually make an effort to think about this and to consider a number of factors that are probably causing you to think the way that you are. First thing you've got to do is start thinking back to a lot of your achievements that you've had over the years, and also think about how these achievements have affected your life. We're looking about raising kids, having a family. These are all achievements. Going out to work, having a career, and different things that you've done over the years. Think of all these achievements as being reasons why you need to consider the fact that age is just a number and how those achievements have helped you to be the person that you are today. Now, the next thing is just to think about those achievements and consider how they have carried you through to retirement. The relationships that you had while you were younger and that you were working, friends and friendships, how many of those have you continued through now into your retirement? Or because some people are still working, do you just not stay in touch with them anymore? Have you reached out to them? Have they reached out to you? Is there a reason why they haven't reached out to you? You've got to really start thinking about the relationships and everything that you had during your working life and how much of that you have carried forward into what you're doing now. One of the other things is like the knowledge and experience that you gained. Throughout your working life, you would have gathered up so much information through different jobs that you've had, different parts of your career, places that you've worked, people that you've met over times. And it's important to think about those things and to think of the value that they had at the time and whether or not that value diminished or disappeared altogether just because you retired or because you've suddenly reached the magic 70 number. I think about, you know, during the time that I was working, different friends that I had that I made through work and other things. Some of those relationships I have maintained for so many years, and they were just work relationships. And I still stay in touch with people. They still stay in touch with me. Friendships that were formed by some of those people through those working relationships, they're still with me. And every now and again we'll catch up and have a coffee or have lunch or something like that. But those friendships and relationships are still there. And it's important that you make an effort to carry those forward through into your retirement. Some of those people that I made friends with through work, and that were a lot younger than me, and they're still working, they've still got their careers, and they've got family and all those sorts of things. But it's just really important to keep a separate little place aside to maintain those relationships, and they take working on. Some of them, they don't always just happen easily. They don't just come knocking at your door. You actually have to work on those. So that's one of the reasons, if you're able to maintain those relationships and friendships and things like that, then that's every reason to not let yourself get into the idea that you're old and that you don't have a purpose anymore. You think about how many of those things that you learned and acquired over your working life, and how many of those that you've been able to carry forward, and how many have you carried forward into your retirement. I know when people are younger and they've got families, they get involved in community work with their kids, with their schooling, and with other organisations, whether they be volunteer. They might be able to put a few hours a week into a volunteer organisation, whether it be for animals or people or just for a number of things that it can involve. Are you still involved in those things? Maybe not the school committee anymore, but there's always groups of people that are gathering for various reasons, either for charity events or just get-togethers, so that they have got a circle of friends that they can call on. And that sort of thing you carry forward through into your retirement. I remember when COVID happened and people were all off work and working from home, and once COVID sort of calmed down and people were able to get back to work again, there was still a lot of people were still getting very sick. They would have COVID, especially at schools. Kids would get COVID and they'd have to quarantine, the family would have to quarantine. And I remember going into a shop one day that I go to regularly, and the owner was there, and he was going on about how he was in such a state because half his staff hadn't turned up for work because they were sick, and all this sort of, and it was genuine reasons that they were sick. And I just said to him, well, I've done retail and I'm retired. If you ever need anyone to fill in at the last minute, just give me a call and I'll see what I can do. It doesn't matter what it is, or, I'm happy to step up and help out wherever I can. And it wasn't long after I got a phone call from him saying, oh, can you come and fill in for me for a couple of hours? A friend, one of the staff's away and one of them's sick and the other one's got to go to a funeral, and there's only me here. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll come down and help out. So I went down and helped out, got him through a tough spot, and I've had several phone calls from him since asking to help out. I've even had phone calls from other people saying, oh, I understand that you are available you'll slot in if someone gets caught with short-staffed. I'll say, yeah, I'll slot in if that's, if I can be of any help, I'll do it for you. And they won't let me do it for nothing. They always pay me, but it helps other people out, and I'm able to take the skills that I learnt through my working life into my retirement. But if you don't let people know about those skills, then you're not going to get those approaches from people to maybe help them out or to slot in where it's necessary. So, it is important to sort of think to yourself about the skills that you've got, that you've gained over the years, and how you can carry those forward now into your retirement. And just because you've turned 70 doesn't mean to say that suddenly you have to think, oh, I can't do that anymore. While your mind is active and your body is reasonably active, you can still do these things. Don't let yourself believe that it's not possible anymore just because suddenly you're 70 and you've got no purpose in life anymore. The other thing too, I think, is really important is as we're getting older, or as you get into your 70s, is to keep moving, whether it's moving intellectually or whether it's moving physically, or just any way that you feel that you can just keep your mind and body active. It's so important. Not that it's a good example, but you've got the President of the United States is 79, coming up 80. The previous one was 80. And okay, people say, oh, what sort of an example is that? But people are still maintaining very, very high positions around the world. and into their 70s and 80s. There's no reason to suddenly think to yourself that I'm old, I've got no purpose anymore. So it's up to you to make sure that you keep in your mind that you've got the ability to do these things, and feel comfortable, feel positive that you've got the ability to do these things. And I'm sure you'll feel so much happier and suddenly forget about that clock that keeps ticking, 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 and another birthday comes round and everyone wants to celebrate, and it's the last thing that you want to think about. But that's another fact of life, unfortunately. So anyway, that's just 5 little tips that I had about possibly thinking how I can stay young, and just make sure that you keep a positive attitude. Age doesn't mean to say that you have to shut yourself down completely. There is so much going on in the world, and there's so much to do, and there's so much need for people to help. There's just a raft of places where you can actually do things and be of value. So I encourage everybody, once you get into your 70s, don't suddenly start thinking, oh, woe is me, I'm 70 now and I'm on a downward slide. No, don't do that. Just say to yourself, right, now that I'm 70, I'm into another decade, what can I do now to keep myself going and to keep an attitude that keeps me thinking positive all the time? So on that note, I will quickly post my stats from yesterday, and once I have done that, I shall say cheerio for now. I do hope everybody has a good day and a good day tomorrow, and I wish you all to stay safe and to take care. Okay then, bye-bye.